Okay, good evening. Tonight I'll be talking about the last individual opportunity myth article. It's called Horatio Alger by Professor Harlan Dalton in Rereading America. So basically, just to introduce Professor Dalton, he's basically his article is very old school. So he's actually a very old school African American professor. He really speaks out against racism. So just right away, just to let you know, he's a really great old school professor. So his views may be old school in the sense that you've heard his ideas before, likely, but of course, unfortunately, they still resonate in today's world, today's American world, unfortunately. So basically, this article. Uh, Dalton addresses the basic Alger myth, where uh, an author, Horatio Alger, basically wrote in the 19th century a lot of famous, great stories about a child, about basically young kids who grew up from poverty and basically by their hard work and determination, basically worked their way up in the world and basically succeeded in the American world. These are very inspiring stories for the audience at that time because it really showed the American dream, right? That even if you're very poor and very young and very poor, you can still rise up in the world through your hard work. So Horatio Alger was basically a very famous author. And basically, Dalton addresses that myth, and he feels that myth is very destructive because, as we learn through the individual opportunity myth, is it really hard work? Is really hard work enough for you to rise in the world in American society? So Dalton is very critical of that. And basically, the unique part about this article, he introduces the idea of American society. We are a meritocracy. So, the word merit, basically, a meritocracy means that in the American world, in the ideal world, we would succeed based on our merits, right? So basically, if you're competing with someone for a job, basically a position in a famed university or college, or someone that, maybe you're competing for a scholarship, a limited number of scholarships with a very high number of applicants, or anything for that matter. You're basically competing for something. Basically, the person with the highest merits will win out. Basically, is a theory, but Dalton thinks that that's not really true in the world. That's a really great theory, but however, it's not really true because of the systemic racism we have in the USA, which actually prevents a lot of people from basically winning out of those positions. So, and he really drives in that point. He really points to our legacy, like America's legacy, which was founded on slavery. One of our legacies is slavery. It's probably like our past that we had to come to terms with. America constantly. It's just a sad reminder. A lot of people acknowledge that. It's just something that we had to come to terms with. But basically, he thinks that, due to racism, merit will not always win out. And he just says, like, to basically, if to kind of believe that myth that merit will always win out, the myth that hard work will always win out, it kind of basically hides or basically protects the racial pecking order which he feels that we have in the USA. It's sort of like that system of racism. Where basically, like, blacks, for example, are judged by against other black students. Say, for example, they go, "Oh, you're the best, the black student I ever had in the law school," right? Professor may say, kind of condescendingly to a black student, but of course, the black student doesn't want to hear that. He wants to hear that he's a best student regardless, like one of the best students regardless. So we can see that already. Like, do you see that thing of systemic racism in the USA? Also, that racial pecking order. It's a very controversial subject again, right? I'm actually opening a can of worms again, as usual, and as book rereading book does as usual. But think about meritocracy, right? In your life, with your family, friends, and people do the people with the best merits always win out? Think about the jobs you competed for, the jobs you will be competing for in the future, or the positions in college and so forth. Things you'll be competing for against other people. Do you feel that you're on equal ground with other people? Or do you feel that you're at an unfair disadvantage? I'll take a story about merit, right? Does merit always win out? So maybe this is a little bit old, but in the 1960s and 1970s, there was a young martial arts superstar named Bruce Lee. He was a very famous actor. He made a lot of great movies, but during his career, you're also probably very familiar with a lot of his classic martial arts movies, right? That's all part of our movie history, right? And very famous, and a lot of people really love that. But he also competed in the TV. He also competed and tried to get an American TV show be a star in an American TV show called the Green Hornet. Sorry, not the Green Hornet, but he starred as a co-star in the Green Hornet. But he tried to try to pitch his idea about being a person in the Old West, trying to find his father, right, in search of his father in the Old Wild West, and it was called Kung Fu, right, the TV series he was trying to pitch. So he was trying to pitch that great idea to the TV producers in America, but eventually the TV producers did do that show, but they chose not to have Bruce Lee as a star. Who they chose? They actually chose a very famous American actor named David Carradine, right? So you probably remember David Carradine from the Chuck Norris movie. He was a villain in the Chuck Norris movie, Lone Wolf McQuade, and David Carradine was also a very great TV star and starred in a lot of movies, a lot of action movies and great movies. But so he's a great actor, David Carradine. But was it really fair that Bruce Lee had the merits as an actor? Maybe was equal to or better than Carradine, and he certainly had the original idea. Why wasn't Bruce Lee chosen to be the star of the Kung Fu? The now famous old TV series. So that's kind of an interesting tale about merit that connects to me as an Asian American too, because I was saying, Bruce Lee is such a great star. Well, why would he not be chosen for that? And do you know of any cases where the better person was actually beaten out for a position? I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on that, especially when you do the next homework assignment on Harlon Dalton's article. So thinking this is also very serious too when you think about the idea of merit, right? Say, for example, there's a job interview. Basically, when the theory that merit wins out. So what happens in a job interview, right? In theory, participants, if it's a fair process, are evaluated on what evaluation criteria, something called evaluation criteria. What does that mean? Evaluation criteria. So three people are competing for a job. They'll be evaluated on set evaluation criteria. So the evaluation criteria should be set standards against which people are measured against, right? Like who has the best college education or the best grades, or who actually has the best internships in college, for example, or who actually has the best accomplishments in this area that are related to the job. You would think people are related based on set criteria, and that could be the case, right? But then that's frustrating too, right? Because sometimes, have you ever been in a situation where the interviewers and you lost out for a job? The interviewers did not tell you about what the criteria were, or they actually were not really clear on how they went about judging people on the criteria. So you can see merit is actually a very controversial issue because basically, sadly to say, a lot of people feel that in many cases, the people with the best merits did not always win out. So are we really a meritocracy? So basically, Harlan Dalton explores that and says, sadly, that's not the case. We had to kind of come to grips with reality because just in some, we're very delusional, right? If you follow that. And it's a natural human tendency to be delusional, right? We want to work hard. We want to keep positive and so forth. But there's also that competing element, even though we want to work hard, keep positive and not have a bad attitude, so to speak. There's also that unfair forces against there, right? Unfair forces like unfair, even though we say we're a meritocracy, but we're really not a meritocracy. That's one of those wider unfair social forces are out there that kind of stymies a lot of us. So think about that, right? As you read Harlan Dalton's article about that myth and why it's very destructive about the individual opportunity myth and the myth of meritocracy, as we would say, right? That type of myth, is it a really myth or is it true, right? Is the USA a fair world when it comes to competing for jobs, college education and so forth, or is it an unfair world? So that's what he's getting at. Now, I'll be eager to hear your thoughts after you read it, and you'll get a chance to share some of your thoughts and homework upcoming. So good night, and I'll talk to you again later. Thank you. Bye.